The first thing you learn about the prison is that it does not exist. Not on maps, not in budgets, not in court records, not in satellite images anyone is supposed to see. If a senator asks about it, the answer is no. If a journalist gets too close, the trail goes cold. If a prisoner dies inside it, the paperwork says he never lived long enough to arrive. And tonight, at 2:13 a.m., every light in cell block C just went out. You are standing in the dark with a rifle in your hands, 3 steel doors between you and 47 men the world has buried alive, and over the radio a voice you have never heard before says 4 words: do not let them out. Then the screaming starts, not panic screaming, not the confused noise of men who do not understand what is happening. This is coordinated, measured, like they knew the lights would fail before you did. A fist pounds metal somewhere down the corridor, another, then another, a rhythm, a signal passing cell to cell in the dark. You flick on your weapon light for half a second. Concrete walls, steel bars, steam in the cold air, nothing else. You kill the beam immediately. Rule number 1 underground. Light tells people where to shoot. The backup generators should have kicked in 6 seconds ago. They have not. Your earpiece crackles. Control to Raven 2, report. You press the transmit key. Block C blackout. No auxiliary power. Possible coordinated disturbance. There is a pause too long to be normal. Then, hold your position. You almost laugh. Hold your position. That is what men say from safe rooms behind bulletproof glass, when they have no idea what it feels like to stand alone in a dead corridor beneath 200 feet of mountain rock, with the worst people on earth listening to you breathe. Another bang. Louder this time. A lock mechanism whines. You freeze. That is impossible. The cells in C block are magnetic lock, mechanical failsafe, reinforced deadbolt, triple redundancies, custom hardware designed by contractors whose names you were never given. No inmate has seen the locking schematics. No inmate should even know where the wiring runs. The whine stops. Then, from somewhere 20 yards ahead, comes the sound every guard here has nightmares about. A cell door opening. Slowly, carefully, not kicked in, not blown apart. Unlocked. You raise the rifle and take 1 step back. There are places in war where men are dangerous because they are angry. There are places where men are dangerous because they are desperate. This is worse. The men in this prison are dangerous because they are patient. The door finishes opening. No one comes out. That is when you understand. This is not a riot. It is something smarter. And you are exactly where they want you. You never planned to work in a place like this. Nobody does. As a kid, maybe you think about being a Marine, a police officer, maybe even one of those men in dark suits who stand behind presidents and scan rooftops. You do not imagine a concrete tomb hidden in the mountains where nations send problems they do not want to admit they created. You were already good when they found you. Army corrections first, then military police, then a deployment guarding a detention site overseas where half the prisoners had aliases and the other half had no names at all. You learned quickly that prison work in places like that is not about brute force. It is about routine, predictability, control of space, sound, movement, timing. You learn that a locked door is not security. Security is knowing what men behind that door are thinking before they act. You got noticed because you were calm. 1 hostage incident. 1 knife smuggled inside a food tray. 1 inmate who decided he wanted to die famous and dragged a young guard into a shower stall with a sharpened piece of bed frame at his throat. Everyone else panicked. You did not. You talked him down, bought time, not by sounding tough, by sounding certain. He dropped the weapon. The guard lived. The report moved upward through channels you never saw. 6 months later, a man in a grey suit met you outside a diner 3 miles from base. No introduction. No agency badge, no last name. He asked if you were satisfied with your career. That is always how it starts. Not with the job, with the dissatisfaction. You said you were doing fine. He said fine is for men who want pensions and stories about what might have been. Then he slid a card across the table. White, blank, 1 number printed in black. No logo, no seal, no explanation. If you want work that matters, he said, call. You told yourself you would throw it away. You kept it in your wallet for 3 weeks. Then one night, after another 14-hour shift babysitting gang leaders and bomb makers in a place everyone pretended was temporary, You sat in your truck, stared at that number, and called. A woman answered. No greeting, no agency name, no questions. Tomorrow, 0800. Wear a suit. Then she hung up. The interview happened in a federal building with no sign out front, and windows too dark to see through from the street. The waiting room had no magazines, no receptionist, no artwork, no sound except the hum of an air vent and the tick of a clock that was probably placed there on purpose to make you feel every second. 3 people interviewed you. 2 men, 1 woman. None gave names. They knew everything. Not the public record version. The real version. They knew about the assault in Kandahar that never made your file. The inmate informant you ran inside the detention unit. The fight in the rec yard where you took a broken jaw and stayed on your feet. They knew about your father drinking himself quiet after the factory closed. Your brother in county jail. The fiancée who left because she said you carried prison home in your eyes. They knew what you feared too. Stagnation. Meaninglessness. Becoming one more tired man, clipping coupons, and pretending his best years happened for a reason. The pitch was simple. There is a facility. It houses individuals too sensitive, too dangerous, or too politically radioactive for any recognized prison system. The inmates cannot be tried publicly. They cannot be released. In some cases, they cannot even be acknowledged as being alive. Your job would not be rehabilitation. It would not be corrections in any normal sense. It would be containment. Absolute, permanent, deniable containment. They let the silence do the work after that. Then the woman leaned forward. If there is ever a fire, flood, riot, breach, foreign incursion, cyber attack, coordinated escape attempt, media exposure event, or political compromise, she said, your duty is not to protect the inmates. Your duty is to ensure they do not leave. You asked what kind of men were inside. One of the men smiled without warmth. The kind countries start wars over. You said yes before they finished the sentence. That should have told you something about yourself. The prison sits inside a mountain that locals think is an abandoned mining complex. 30 miles of bad road. No cell service. No signs. No nearby town big enough to ask questions. The deliveries come at night in unmarked trucks escorted by men wearing uniforms with no flag patches. The power grid is independent. Water is pulled from an underground reservoir. Every door is controlled from 2 separate stations. Every corridor is covered by overlapping cameras, thermal sensors, pressure pads, acoustic monitors, and blast shutters that can seal a section in under 4 seconds. The official internal designation is Facility Kestrel. Nobody calls it that. The guards call it the grave. Because once someone goes in, he does not come back out. The training lasts 11 weeks and strips away every assumption you have about what a prison is. You are not trained like a corrections officer. You are trained like part jailer, part infantryman, part hostage negotiator, part systems technician, part execution squad that hopes never to be needed. First comes architecture. You memorize the place like a religion. Every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every camera blind spot, every manual override hatch, every oxygen valve, every emergency seal, every floodgate, every independent lock circuit. You learn which walls are structural and which are facade over conduit lines, which floors can be electrified, which vents can be closed remotely, which blocks can be depressurized if containment fails badly enough. They walk you through it with the lights on, then they do it again in darkness, then in smoke, then wearing blackout goggles, then with alarms screaming and recorded gunfire echoing through the hallways so loudly you cannot think. If you do not know the prison blindfolded, they tell you, the prison will kill you before the inmates get the chance. Then comes behavior, not yours, theirs. You study prisoner psychology the way snipers study wind. Radical clerics, cartel logisticians, war criminals, coup plotters, intelligence officers who ran torture sites, chemists who designed nerve agents, men who moved money for massacres, men who ordered villages erased, men who built networks that still operate outside these walls. Some of them are violent, some are charming, some are educated enough to make you feel stupid in conversation. Some pretend to be broken, some pray, some sing, some never speak at all. You learn the oldest rule in containment work. A dangerous prisoner does not need a weapon to attack you. He needs your curiosity, your pity, your boredom, your ego. They teach you not to converse, only to command, not to threaten, only to state, not to improvise when routine will do. In ordinary prisons, guards control inmates physically. Here, you control them through timing. Meals arrive at exact minutes. Lights dim at exact minutes. Movement happens at exact minutes. Search teams rotate on irregular schedules generated by software the prisoners cannot predict. White noise plays in ventilation at randomized intervals to disrupt covert communication. Water pressure changes from block to block, so no inmate can infer activity elsewhere in the facility from pipe noise. Every detail is intentional. The point is not comfort. The point is to deny pattern. Men can build escape plans out of patterns. Weapons training comes next. Not academy shooting. Not range qualification with paper silhouettes. This is close quarter containment under subterranean conditions. Short rifles, shotguns with specialized loads, flash diversion devices calibrated for confined corridors, tasers that work through layered clothing, gas deployment masks, less lethal options for extraction teams, lethal options for when less lethal becomes fantasy. You drill hallway pushes, breach responses, shield formations, stairwell domination, cell extractions, kill house runs modified to simulate prison blocks. You practice shooting under red lights, strobe lights, no lights. You practice while alarms scream and sprinklers soak the floor until every step is a slip hazard. You practice after sprinting flights of stairs in body armor until your pulse is hammering so hard the optic shakes. Because if a breach ever happens here, it will not be chaos for long. It will become math. You, them, doorways, angles, seconds. Then come the protocols nobody says out loud on the first day. Scorched corridor protocol, terminal lockdown protocol, black transfer protocol, asset denial protocol. The names are vague on purpose. The meanings are not. If a rescue attempt reaches the inner blocks, you delay until the mounting can be sealed. If a foreign team compromises control, you isolate sectors and erase evidence. If an inmate's release would trigger geopolitical catastrophe, there are measures. If the facility itself cannot remain deniable, there are measures for that too. One instructor says it plainly on week 9, this is not a prison built to hold men for trial. This is a prison built to make inconvenient men disappear. No one writes that down. By your second year at the grave, the place feels almost normal. That is how it gets you. You learn the sounds, the clank of meal carts, the hydraulic cough of outer blast doors, the slow breath of the ventilation system, the way different prisoners move. Some pace, some sit still for hours, some pray facing walls, some stare into the camera with such steady hatred that you stop meeting their eyes through the monitor. You work alpha rotation, nights mostly. The world above sleeps while you walk corridors with fluorescent light bleaching the skin from your hands. Your team is 8 men and 2 women, prior military federal tactical units, a former prison gang investigator, one ex-Navy diver who looks like he was carved out of a loading dock. No one talks much off shift. The job does something to language. You spend all night speaking in numbers, commands and checklists. Eventually real conversation starts feeling unnecessary. The inmates become legends before they become people. Cell A3 is a former intelligence colonel from a country that publicly insists he died in a convoy strike 12 years ago. He once ran black sites so brutal his own government burned the records. He speaks 4 languages and smiles whenever a young guard works his block. Cell D9 is a bomb maker whose devices killed more children than most wars. He has reconstructed 3 separate lock mechanisms from memory using crumbs of soap and threads pulled from his blanket, just to prove he could. Cell B1 is a financier who can move money through 7 countries without touching a bank, and once caused 2 riots in 1 week by convincing rival extremists they were being favored differently at meal distribution, even though they never saw each other. And in C block, the one now sitting in darkness around you, is the worst concentration of them all. Men too influential to kill, too dangerous to acknowledge, too connected to release, too valuable to expose. You do not guard C block alone because anyone thinks one guard is enough. You guard it alone because the design assumes if anything goes wrong there, reinforcements will arrive too late to matter. A laugh rises from down the corridor. Calm, close. Male. You swing the rifle toward the sound. Nothing. Then a voice from one of the open cells says your name. Not your rank. Not guard. Your name. Very softly, like he is greeting an old friend. That sends a colder shock through you than the blackout did. No inmate is supposed to know personal names. Rotations are referred to by call signs. Identity exposure is a disciplinary event. Home addresses are scrubbed from records. Family details are firewalled. The prison learned years ago that men with nothing but time can turn a guard's private life into a weapon sharper than any blade. Yet in the dark, from behind steel, someone has said your name. You key the radio. Control, inmate compromise. Repeat, inmate has personal identifier. Static. Then nothing. No reply. That is wrong. In a way, blackouts are not. Power can fail. Generators can fail. Locks can fail. Control does not go silent. You begin backing toward the manual gate at the far end of the corridor. 10 steps to cover. 12 to the dead switch that can drop the inner shutter. Your boots scrape lightly against concrete. Somewhere to your left, feet touch the floor outside a cell. One prisoner out. Maybe two. Not rushing you, still patient. Another voice speaks. Accent hard to place. They lied to you about what this place is. You do not answer. They told you it was a prison. A shadow moves across the corridor. You fire your light again, half-second burst. A man in grey prison clothes stands by the opposite wall. Hands empty, face unreadable. Thin, older than you expected. White hair cut short. He does not flinch from the light. On his chest, the patch reads C12. You know the file. Officially, he does not exist. Unofficially, he once coordinated internal purges for a government friendly to yours, until the day he became inconvenient to both sides. 3 coup attempts. 2 peace negotiations derailed. Hundreds dead. Brilliant. Patient. Dangerous enough that the psychological profile used the phrase strategic predation 3 separate times. The light goes dark again. You should run, he says. Then, farther down the block, something metallic hits the floor and rolls. You move on instinct, diving behind the corner as 3 shots crack through the darkness. Not inmate-made zip gun pops. Not ricocheting junk metal. Real gunfire. Suppressed, but unmistakable. Concrete chips burst from the wall where your head was an instant earlier. Now you understand what this is. Not a disturbance. Not an escape attempt. An extraction. Someone has gotten weapons into C block. Your pulse steadies instead of spikes. Training takes over. You slam the manual switch. Nothing. Mechanical resistance. Then dead slack. The circuit is cut. The prison is blind. The gate is offline. The block is compromised. And somewhere above you, somebody opened the way. That is the real fear in a place like this. Not that monsters are beneath the mountain. That someone on the surface might want one set free. Your first live crisis at the grave happened in year 3. Not this night. A different night. Smaller, but bad enough that the memory never left. A transfer came in blacked out. No markings on the transport plane, no insignia on the escort team, no manifest with a real name. The prisoner wore a hood, noise-cancelling muffs, flex cuffs, ankle chains, chest harness, and still managed to carry himself like someone who expected to be obeyed. The receiving paperwork listed him as foreign intelligence, high value, extreme isolation required. You were on intake security. The hood came off in processing bay 2. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, sharp eyes, no visible fear. He looked around the bay once, taking in door positions, camera domes, personnel count, the timing of the restraints team, all in under 3 seconds. You recognized the type immediately. Not the fanatic who burns hot, the planner who survives. Then he smiled at one of the escort officers. Not a random smile, a knowing one. The officer's expression changed almost too subtly to catch. Almost enough for you. You called for a pause under the pretext of chain reinspection, stepped between them, and saw it. A folded square of clear plastic tucked into the seam of the escort officer's glove. Tiny, easy to miss. Inside it, a sliver of something metallic and a micro-printed strip with numbers. The officer moved for you. Fast. Too fast for a man expecting no suspicion. He got one hand on your throat before your partner broke his knee with a baton strike. The rest went loud and ugly after that. Another escort reached for a hidden blade. One of your team took it in the shoulder. Alarm, shouting, guns drawn but not fired because the prisoner was right there smiling in the middle of it all, like a man watching stage actors miss their cue. The investigation vanished above your clearance level inside an hour. Officially, it was a contractor vetting failure. Unofficially, everyone understood. People on the outside wanted the man inside. That is when the prison stopped feeling like a remote assignment and started feeling like the center of a silent war. Back in the dark corridor, another suppressed shot cracks past you. You return fire toward the muzzle flash. 2 controlled rounds. A grunt answers. Good hit or good acting, impossible to know. You move low, hugging the wall, counting steps toward the emergency ladder shaft. If you can reach Junction 7, you can access the ceiling crawlway, bypass the corridor choke point, and get above the block. From there, maybe restore comms, maybe cut them off, maybe die in a more useful place. Your earpiece hisses, then a voice. Not Control. Raven 2, do not proceed to Junction 7. They're waiting. You stop. The voice belongs to Mira, your shift supervisor. Former Federal Tactical Response. Never rattled. She sounds breathless now, which is how you know things are truly broken. Where are you? You whisper. Security Station Bravo is gone. Internal breach. At least 4 hostiles in uniform. Maybe more. We've lost cameras on levels 3 through 6. Outer access is sealed from the surface. By us or them? A pause. That's the question. Then gunfire erupts through her mic. Shouting. Someone screaming. The transmission cuts. You are alone again. People think hidden prisons are built out of force. Concrete, steel, guns, intimidation. That is only the shell. What really holds a place like this together is trust in procedure. Trust that the locks respond. Trust that Control answers. Trust that the uniforms around you belong to your side. The second that trust goes, the prison transforms. Every hallway becomes an ambush route. Every locked door becomes a trap. Every familiar face becomes a doubt. That is what outsiders never understand. The architecture of a secret prison is not just physical. It is psychological. It has to convince guards they are in control, and inmates they are not. Tonight that illusion is gone. You reach the service ladder and pull yourself upward into the maintenance shaft. Pitch black, steel rungs slick with condensation, rifle slung tight, sidearm loosened, breath shallow. The shaft smells like dust, oil, and the metallic tang of mountain water. 10 feet up, you hear movement below in the corridor you just left. Voices, 2 of them. 1 prisoner, 1 not. The second voice is using tactical shorthand, not inmate language. Professional. Extraction team confirmed. That changes the equation. If outsiders are inside, they did not come for everyone. They came for someone specific, maybe 2 or 3 specific someones. Which means the blackout, the dead radios, the corrupted guards, the open cells, all of it is a precision operation disguised as chaos. That is in some ways worse than a mass escape. A riot is heat. This is surgery. You crawl through the shaft until you reach the grated overlook above C block. Through the slits below, the corridor is smeared in darkness and intermittent muzzle flashes. You spot bodies, 1 in grey, 1 in uniform. Hard to tell who is who. Then movement at cell C12. The white-haired prisoner stands outside his door speaking to 3 men in guard uniforms, except they are not moving like guards. Too fluid, too quiet, too assured. 1 kneels by a hard case on the floor. Another watches angles with a compact rifle. The third hands C12, a folded set of dark civilian clothes. So that is the package. Not a riot, not a breakout. A snatch operation for 1 inmate, buried so deep, nobody was supposed to know where to find him. You line up the optic through the grate and settle on the kneeling man first. If he is on the case, he is tech or breacher. Remove him and the rest lose speed. You exhale. Then a hand closes over your mouth from behind. You slam backward, twisting, elbowing ribs, grabbing for the sidearm. The 2 of you crash against the shaft wall in a blind metal storm. Whoever it is knows how to fight in confined space. No wasted motion, strong grip, trying to choke you with your own sling. You get 1 finger under the pressure, pivot, drive the heel of your boot into a shin, and wrench sideways hard enough to break balance. The figure slams into the ladder hatch, cursing. Female voice. Mira. Easy, damn it. She hisses. You both freeze a beat, breathing hard. Then she says, You're bleeding. You touch your cheek. Wet. You had not noticed. She peers through the grate below. Who's the target? C12. Of course it is. She has a pistol in 1 hand and a blood-soaked bandage wrapped around the other forearm. Not fatal, not good either. What happened at Bravo, you ask? Inside assist. Two guards turned, opened in a vestibule for a team posing as maintenance. They hit comms first, then control relays. We stopped some of them. Not enough. How many friendlies left? Walking, maybe 9. In a facility built for 80 inmates and run by 40 rotating security personnel, 9 is not a number. It is a countdown. Below, the extraction team starts moving C-12 down the corridor. Mira watches them go. Orders? There are no orders. Only doctrine. Do not let them out. This is the part no recruitment pitch can really explain. In secret places, morality is often replaced by geometry. The right answer is whichever one keeps the door closed. Does not matter if the man leaving could expose massacres, black budgets, back-channel treaties, covert alliances, assassinations, operations conducted by your side and theirs, and third countries pretending innocence. Does not matter if he deserves trial or death or daylight. Your job is not justice. Your job is containment. You tell Mira to cut across the upper conduit and reach section lock 9. If she can restore the blast doors for the east stairwell, you can bottleneck the team before they reach the transport shaft. She nods and goes without another word. That is why she is still alive. You drop back into the corridor one level ahead of the extraction route and sprint through red emergency lights that have finally flickered to life in ragged strips. Smoke hangs low now. Sprinklers hiss somewhere in another block. The prison is waking up in pieces, systems rebooting unevenly, like a wounded animal deciding whether to stand or die. You hit the junction just as the team rounds the corner. 3 hostiles in stolen uniforms. C-12 behind them, now dressed in black. 1 more trailing rear security. Professional spacing. Good discipline. They see you instantly. The corridor detonates into gunfire. You fire on the lead man and feel rather than see the hit. He folds into the wall. The second dives. The third shoves C-12 flat and returns fire with brutal precision. A round punches your left shoulder plate and spins you into the concrete. You keep the rifle up because training is habit, and habit is survival. Mira saves you. The east stairwell blast door slams down behind the team with a scream of tortured steel, sealing their rear route. For the first time all night, surprise crosses one of their faces. Good. Now they are trapped between a closed block and an unopened exit. Not enough. The trailing man drops a device from his vest, something the size of a brick with 2 magnetic clamps. Breach charge. He is going to cut through the service hatch to the lift shaft. You shoot him twice. He still manages to thumb the trigger before falling. The explosion turns the corridor white. Your ears vanish into ringing. Dust and hot fragments rip the air. Emergency lights die again. When vision returns in flickers, the hatch is gone and there is a jagged hole smoking at floor level where metal used to be. One of the hostiles is dead. 1 is trying to stand and failing. The third has C-12 by the arm, dragging him toward the hole. No time for precision now. You drop the rifle, draw the sidearm, and charge. The standing hostile fires once and misses because he is backing up too fast. You hit him at full speed, driving both of you into the opposite wall. Pistol bucks in your hand between bodies. Once. Twice. He goes loose. C-12 does not run. That is what you expected. But not because he is resigned. Because he is calculating. He looks at the hole. Looks at you. Looks at the fallen hostile nearest him. Then he does something that tells you exactly why governments hide men like him in mountains. He smiles. You still don't know who built this place, he says. Then he grabs the dead man's weapon. You fire first. 1 round center chest. Another high. He drops against the wall, sliding down slowly, expression almost disappointed rather than pained. For a second the corridor is silent, except for ringing, steam, your own ragged breath. Then, over the prison speakers, a voice fills the mountain. Not automated. Live. Facility-wide terminal containment protocol initiated. All personnel proceed to surface checkpoints. Repeat. Terminal containment protocol initiated. You feel cold all at once. There are phrases everyone at the grave knows and hopes never to hear. That is one of them. Terminal containment means the prison is no longer trying to restore order. It is preparing to erase a breach. Mira appears through the smoke, face grey with dust. Did you get him? You nod towards C-12's body. She stares at it for 1 beat too long. Then we need to move. Who initiated terminal? Does it matter? It does, but not enough. When terminal containment starts, sections seal, records purge, fuel lines open, oxygen systems cycle, and parts of the facility become uninhabitable by design. Nobody tells guards exactly which parts, because the planners believe too much knowledge creates hesitation. You and Mira move fast through corridors you know by muscle memory now. Up one stairwell, across intake, through processing, past the medical bay where two bodies in uniform lie near the nurse's station, one of them a man you had coffee with 3 nights ago. No time, no ceremony. Above ground, the mountain is already starting to lock itself behind steel. At Surface Gate 2, 6 survivors are waiting. Out of 40, one has a shattered hand, one is limping, one is crying in hard silent gasps like he has not accepted he is doing it. Nobody asks who made it. Nobody wants the answer yet. The outer blast doors open 5 feet, just enough to squeeze through. As you step into the freezing pre-dawn air, the mountain exhales behind you, a deep mechanical roar. Then a thud felt in the ribs more than heard. Somewhere inside, charges are dropping tunnels, sealing shafts, destroying routes. Maybe bodies, maybe evidence, maybe truths entire governments killed to hide. The sun is just beginning to edge the horizon. The sky is cold blue over miles of wilderness that will never know what sits beneath it. Helicopters appear 15 minutes later, black, unmarked, no insignia. Men in clean tactical gear secure the perimeter and separate the survivors before anyone can compare stories. By noon, you are in debrief. Small room. White walls, no windows. Paper cup of bad coffee, untouched in front of you. Across the table, a man from oversight, though that is not what he calls himself. He asks what happened in C Block. You tell him. He asks who fired first. You tell him. He asks if C-12 said anything before he died. You tell him the truth. He said, I still didn't know who built this place. The man writes nothing down. That is how you know the answer matters. He asks whether any inmate other than C-12 escaped containment. You say no. He studies you for a long moment, weighing not just your words but whether you understand what they cost. Then he says something that confirms everything you have begun to suspect. You prevented a geopolitical disaster. Not heroic. Not grateful. Administrative. Like you stopped a leak in a roof. Weeks pass. Officially, you are on administrative recovery. Unofficially, you are being observed. Your apartment has probably been swept twice. Your messages probably filtered. Your calls probably flagged for tone analysis. Men from the grave do not simply return to ordinary life with questions in their heads. You hear rumors because rumor is the only currency places like that allow. C-12 had archives, names, agreements, black site locations, proof of operations spanning 3 administrations and 4 countries. Proof that allies funded enemies when convenient. Proof that massacres blamed on warlords were encouraged by governments wearing cleaner suits. Proof the prison itself was built not just to hide men, but to hide history. Maybe all of that is true. Maybe none of it is. The dangerous thing is you no longer know where the line is between conspiracy and classified memory. That happens when you spend long enough underground. Shadows stop feeling like absence. They start feeling like evidence. 3 months later, the grey-suited man who first recruited you visits again. Same calm, same blankness. He offers you a promotion of sorts. Training division, surface logistics, better pay, better hours, less direct exposure. The kind of move organizations make when they want to reward you and bury you at the same time. You ask what happened to the grave. He says there was a structural incident. You ask whether it will reopen. He says facilities evolve. You ask who built it. For the first time since you have known him, he smiles like a man hearing a child ask where storms come from. Everyone, he says. That's why no one can admit it. Then he slides a folder toward you. Inside is a new assignment. Different location, different designation, different mountain. There is always another one. That is the final truth people do not understand about places like the grave. They imagine one prison, one black site, one hidden scar buried beneath one patch of earth. Reality is more practical and more depressing than that. Systems like this do not end. They migrate, rename themselves, change contractors, change acronyms, move prisoners from one hole in the world to another, and call it continuity of national security, and men like you move with them. You tell yourself you should walk away, that you have seen enough, that the dead corridor in C block should have been the moment you handed in your badge and tried to become the kind of man who buys groceries without checking exits, sleeps without hearing metal doors in his dreams. You tell yourself that. Then you remember the voice in the dark saying your name. You remember C12 smiling with blood on his lips. You remember terminal containment rumbling through the mountain like judgment. And underneath all of it, if you are honest, you remember something else. Pride. Not the clean kind. The ugly kind. The kind that comes from knowing when the hidden world failed. You did not. You held the line. You kept the door closed. You buried a truth before it could walk back into daylight. That is the sickness in the work. It teaches you to mistake necessity for virtue, secrecy for duty, silence for honor. Maybe that is all any hidden prison really is in the end. A machine for turning horrible decisions into routine. A machine that needs inmates, yes, but also guards. Especially guards. The new facility is colder, smaller, built farther north in stone, so old it feels prehistoric. The briefing packet is thinner than the last one. The rules are mostly the same. No names, no phones, no questions beyond need to know. If containment fails, containment comes first. On your first night there, you stand in the observation booth above intake corridor 1 and watch a transport team bring in a new prisoner, hooded and chained beneath bright white lights. The prisoner is tall, calm, expensively still. One of the intake officers removes the hood. You do not recognize the face, but you recognize the smile. That same faint, patient expression men wear when they know more than the room they have entered. The officer beside you says the prisoner was a minister once. Maybe more than a minister. Involved in things nobody will ever print. Valuable enough to keep. Dangerous enough to hide. The officer asks if you have worked a site like this before. You look through the glass at the man below as chains are checked, signatures faked, cameras angled, records prepared for a life that will not officially exist. Then you answer. Long enough, you say. Below, the prisoner lifts his eyes toward the glass. Maybe he sees you. Maybe he only sees his reflection. Either way, he smiles a little wider. And somewhere deep in the mountain, a door closes with the sound of the world forgetting another man on purpose.